everybody, and welcome back to the Crypt. In today's video, I'll be challenging myself to beat God of War Ragnarok on Give Me God of War difficulty in New Game Plus. The reason I'm playing this in New Game Plus is because I've completed this game before and know the mechanics and gameplay well. Not long after its release in November 2022, Santa Monica Studio released an update to Ragnarok that included New Game Plus, allowing you to carry over all your equipment, upgrades, armor, and more to New Game Plus. I consider myself a trophy hunter and have platinum many PlayStation games in the past. I platinum Ragnarok, but there was no incentive for me to beat New Game Plus because there was no trophy added for beating it. But for the sake of this video, I'm trying to give me God of War difficulty in New Game Plus for a refreshing visit to one of my favorite game series on the PlayStation. I am carrying over everything I gained from my completed playthrough of Ragnarok, so this might make things easier for the God of War difficulty, but that remains to be seen. So sit back, relax, and let's have fun with it. Let's fucking go. So we start off our adventure with Kratos staring at a fire as Atreus is carrying a deer into the cave. This was a nice callback to God of War 2018 when the first thing you did was hunt deer with a young and inexperienced Atreus, and perfectly shows how Atreus has aged and matured since the events of the first game. Moving on, we quickly get on our dog sled, or should I say wolf sled, and are attacked by Freya in a climactic opening. What's funny to me in this scene is that it's intended you only have your starter equipment from the start of a new game. However, since it's a New Game Plus, I have a different shield, which in this game scene doesn't quite make sense for the sword to get wedged in it. Anyway, moving on, we escape Freya and we make it back to Kratos in Atreus' home, back to safety in the stave. We witness an emotional scene with Atreus and Freyr as Atreus puts Freyr down because Freyr is dying. Kratos lets Atreus have a moment with Freyr and then goes to sleep dreaming of his deceased wife Faye. And in this dream, Faye teaches Kratos that things don't need to be at their front door for it to be their problem, and tells Kratos he's a good boy. Honestly, I'm jealous of Kratos because I want to be told I'm a good boy too. Kratos' dream quickly became a nightmare as he wakes up in the panic wondering where Atreus has gone to and starts looking for him. This is where we get our first combat encounter in the woods. Admittedly, since this New Game Plus and the gear I carried over was from my completed save file, this fight was easy. But I would like to note that these enemies have a substantial amount of health for beginner level enemies. Each hit given only takes out a sliver of their health, so it takes a good amount of hits to kill each enemy, even with my New Game Plus upgraded weapons. Since this is a new playthrough, I took time to equip new armor, rune attacks, and equipment carried over from my completed save file. If you ever played Ragnarok before, I recommend using the Dauntless Shield because parrying rewards you with a high stun damage on your shield bashes, which comes in handy for delivering quick kills on enemies. Continuing forward, we get more enemy encounters on our search for Atreus in the woods. In some of these later encounters, I noticed enemies can level up during the fight, giving themselves more health and damage in the process. This is probably the added difficulty of Give Me God of War, and kind of begs the question as to how difficult this playthrough is going to get later on when I encounter stronger enemies that can level up mid-fight. We eventually get through the woods and enemy encounters, and upon leaving this cave, get attacked by
Teddy bear.
This is the first boss fight in Ragnarok, and for God of War difficulty, this fight was not that difficult. I exhaust all my rune attacks to do as much damage as I can to Bjorn. Like the enemies before, I noticed Bjorn has a lot of health, so it takes quite some time for me to defeat him. But eventually we defeat Bjorn and is revealed to be Atreus. Atreus realized he transformed because of his emotions, and Kratos tells Atreus he needs to keep training to gain control of his emotions and powers. What I like about this scene is that Atreus tells Kratos to stop being a father and start thinking like a general, and Kratos answers with a quick no. This is a great callback to the first God of War game on the PS2 in which Kratos was a general of the Spartan army. Kratos gives a quick no because he doesn't want to relive his bloody past and wants to put it behind him. But later Kratos does become a general and leads the realms into battle against Odin, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to. We make our way back to Kratos and Atreus' home and repair the protection stave along the way. We also get introduced to Atreus' ability to help us in combat, which to me is greatly appreciated. Atreus can easily stun enemies before they land attacks on Kratos, which does come in handy a lot throughout the game. Since this is New Game Plus, I do have Atreus' summons available from the start, which again does make this playthrough easier from the start of the game. If there's something I like about the combat in this game, it is that throwing enemies out of the combat arena counts as a kill. This can come in handy for dealing with tougher enemies in later combat encounters. We continue fighting through some more enemy encounters on our way home. These encounters were not difficult, so there's not much to say here. We eventually make our way back home and are visited by unwanted guests, Thor and Odin. There's a lot I like about this cutscene, but if I were to pick one part of it, it would be when Thor Thor and Kratos put their weapons on the table. It showcases the power and intimidation between Kratos and Thor, adding tension to an already tense situation without saying any word. You just know when these two throw down, it's going to be epic. And when Kratos turns down Odin's offer for protection from Freya, they do just that. This fight was quite difficult, leading to my first death. And no, I'm not talking about the fake out death in this fight either. Thor proved to be difficult to defeat as it was a constant battle to keep my health up. Most of this fight, my health was nearly depleted. However, I do manage to defeat Thor and continue with the story, meeting up with Brock and Sindri to return to Kratos' home. When Odin and Thor visited, Odin revealed Atreus was searching for Tyr, and when we reached home, Kratos confronts Atreus about searching for Tyr. Atreus tells Kratos he wants to show him something at one of the giants' prophecies that they have visited before. So we make our way there, fighting some enemies along the way. On the way there, I was disappointed that I couldn't cut this person down, yet later I could cut down this person who's still alive, so what's with that? 10 out of 10 game, huh, IGN? I mentioned before that enemies can level up during a fight, but what I never knew is that they can level up twice during a fight. Give Me God of War is starting to show its difficulty, and I'll consider this counter as an omen for how difficult things will be getting later on. Enemies do take a lot of health, so I decided to equip Valor Spartan Rage ability so that I can heal in combat encounters. It seems like in these fights, I'm constantly fighting to keep my health up, so Valor will help me in a pinch. Moving on, we later encounter the Huntress who breaks our shield, but I think you know where I'm going with this. New Game Plus means I still have my shield, and it works just fine. And so in this fight, I still get to use the shield despite it's supposed to be broken. I thought this mini-boss would be difficult, but to my surprise, I took her out pretty easily. We eventually make it to one of the Giants' prophecies, which explains how the Giants predicted Ragnarok to happen and why Atreus is looking for Tyr, the God of War. We meet up with Sindri, my favorite character in this newer God of War games because of events that happen later on. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We teleport to the World Tree, and I must say I love this reference to the first game.
You remember we don't have the Unity Stone to let us jump off, right?
Of course he remembers. Right, brother?
Of course I remember.
We arrive at Sindri's and Brock's home in the World Tree, and this is where I'm introduced to all the New Game Plus additions at the Forge. In New Game Plus, I'm able to level up my weapons to 3 different tiers at level 9, and eventually level 10. For me, this is a new way to experience Ragnarok, so I'm glad I decided to pick New Game Plus for Give Me God of War difficulty. But what's sad to see is Atreus' abilities don't get any additional upgrades. Considering Atreus' involvement in combat is mostly small throughout the game, this is not a problem. Looking at my enchantments, I have 2 enchantments, Regenerating Essence and Greater Regenerating Essence. These enchantments steadily regenerate health for me. Since enemies take a lot of health during combat, this will heal me between combat encounters so I can enter fights with full health. Moving on with the story, Sindri and Brock use a device to enable us to travel between all 9 realms, at the expense of pain from Ymir.
Right in your eyes. Oh, Cindy, you sodding bastard!
Atreus suspects Tyr is locked away in the mines of Starfelheim, so the first realm we are visiting is Starfelheim. Upon arriving in Starfelheim, we get our magical boat, which is always at the shoreline wherever we go, no matter which realm we visit. Seriously, if you played this game, you would know. Paddle through some water in Starfelheim and solve some basic puzzles, which Atreus and Mimir are keen on telling us how to solve before we've had time to even think about the puzzle. We also get some enemy encounters with these lizard-like enemies who jump out of the water yet somehow are killed by it when thrown back in. These enemy encounters are not difficult, so there's not much to say here, besides, you know, being killed by water. My goal for this playthrough is to beat the game, so I'm not too interested in searching around for collectibles like rune chests and loot. But here I do some searching around because it's not too far off the beaten path. I especially want to collect these dues of the World Tree because they provide us small but permanent upgrades to our stats. Continuing with the story, we arrive at the City of Dwarves. Hey everyone, quick interjection here. If you like the video so far, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm always looking for feedback, so please tell me in the comments what you like and don't like in the video and what you like to see more of. Thanks, and let's get back to the video. We meet up with Sindri and he gives Atreus an upgrade to his bow, rune arrows. This being a New Game Plus playthrough, I'm assuming we didn't get this upgrade because it could be game breaking. At the Forge, I get a Resurrection Stone, which I don't know why I haven't gotten one up until now. We make our way through the city and I notice these drop near spear targets. What's interesting to me is that these targets cannot be used until we're supposed to unlock the spear. Like the rune arrows, I assume it could be game breaking, so that's why the targets are not usable yet. Moving through the city, we get some combat encounters with some more lizard-like enemies. What I noticed about these fights is that there are more enemies than I remember. It's been a while since I played Ragnarok, so maybe I'm not remembering quite correctly. Anyway, after these fights, I admittedly got lost in the city, unsure about where I'm supposed to go. I finally find out where to go and meet with the game's composer, Beer McCreary. But in God of War, he's a dwarf known as Rabe, which is beer spelled backwards. The instrument he's playing is the same instrument he played at the Game Awards in 2022, which is known as the hurdy-gurdy. No, I'm not making that up, that's the actual name of the instrument. But enough of legendary game composers, let's move on with the story. We leave the place and are greeted by Sindri, in which he gifts us a compass, as Kratos puts it.
It is a compass.
Ah, but a beautiful compass. Now scamper off.
We get into our magical boat and paddle into the Bay of Bounty. There's an optional objective here to explore the mining rigs and shut them down, but we're going to stick to our main objective, Durlin's place. But not before I collect this due. We arrive at Durlin's place and are given a quote-unquote fine for fucking up Durlin's office. We leave Durlin's place to report to another common account with the lizard-like enemies. This was an easy fight, so not much to say here. We make our way to the minecart that brings us to the mine that supposedly Tyr is imprisoned in. On the way, we are stopped because the tracks are destroyed. Here I find my first rune chest and decide since I do have the Draupnir spear, I'll try to solve this rune puzzle. I searched for way too long for the third rune target until I finally caved in and looked it up online. I seriously wasted so much time just looking for the third pillar, I don't even know why I bothered. Moving on, we have a mini boss encounter with a Dreki, which proved to be quite difficult. Even with the resurrection stone, I did die to the Dreki once, but then I did kill him the second time. I also had this funny glitch during the fight in which Kratos had to resurrect himself. We make our way to the other minecart that has been derailed and fix it to make our way into the mine. And of course, get attacked by more lizard-like enemies. This is a scripted segment in which you must press the on-screen button prompts to fight off these enemies. But I had a brain fart for a moment and forgot which buttons were R1 and R2, which almost got me killed in a few hits. Even in these scripted segments, Give Me God of War is not holding back. The minecart crashes and we are greeted by a troll. I love how killing the troll is also a scripted segment because it's like a response to how reused trolls were as boss fights in God of War 4. Immediately after killing the troll, we get another enemy encounter with lizards. I swear to God, these guys don't stop. But with almost every lizard fight so far, this was not difficult. After killing the lizards, we make our way to the mine, solving some puzzles along the way. And just like before, Mimir is keen on telling me how to solve the puzzle after I've already solved it.
These are different.
Bracer to the left of the chest. Maybe you can light it?
Good bet.
We meet with Sindri again, in which he gifts us a device that provides a light source for exploring the mine. I've noticed the reoccurring gifts Sindri gives us as it plays into the story of Ragnarok much later into the game. It's a fun detail that can be overlooked when you're casually playing through the game. Anyway, after speaking to Sindri, we get another combat encounter, but finally it's something else other than the lizards. After this easy fight, we make our way through the mines looking for Tyr. At the forge, I get some needed upgrades and continue trekking ahead. The mines are mostly water puzzles, so there's not much to say here. Before reaching Tyr, there's an optional boss with a Draugr named the Hateful. Since most of the fights until now were pretty easy, except for a couple boss fights, I decided to give this boss a try. This boss fight was probably the hardest fight I had as I died multiple times. What's difficult about this fight is that the boss can level up during the fight. Give Me God of War is once again showing its difficulty. However, I was determined to defeat this boss and eventually I did. Admittedly, the loot was nothing to write home about, but I'm glad I decided to take on this boss for some added challenge. After all, what's the point of playing Give Me God of War if it's not going to be that challenging? Moving forward, we get more puzzles and eventually reach the door in which Tyr is locked behind. Before knocking down the door, we get into a fight with some Asgardians. These Asgardians are not too difficult, but do provide some challenge. Unlike some certain lizard enemies, each hit the Asgardians give inflict Bifrost damage, and like most enemies, they can level up during a fight too. After defeating the Asgardians, we meet Tyr, as he runs off like a coward with Atreus behind him, leaving Kratos to fight Asgardians alone. In one of these fights, there's a brute-like enemy that almost took out all my health in one fucking hit. It was a difficult fight, but what I learned was to kill him as quick as possible so he can't level up. We eventually meet up with Tyr and Atreus as Kratos tells Tyr to stop being a pussy and snap out of it. Hey everyone, so this is where I'm going to end the video. Not quite the best note to end the video on, but But I've recorded about 3.5 hours of footage, so I think this is plenty for my first video on YouTube in these games where I'm playing the hardest difficulty. So if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you watching up until the end. This has been Kryptonic, and I'll see you guys in the next one.